All right, guys, can you please confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yes, very clear, sir.
Okay. So what we are going to be talking about today is Node.js. Is anybody familiar with Node.js? Anybody? Well, I can assume that everybody, we are starting from absolute scratch.
Exactly, sir.
Okay. So how about, can you still see my screen?
Yes, sir.
We can see your screen, sir.
JavaScript, you've been taught JavaScript, have you?
Yes, sir.
So how was the introduction and the entire listing on JavaScript? What was it like? What was the general consensus? Were you able to follow? Did you gain enough insight into JavaScript? Because that is more like a prerequisite, and it's very important to understand JavaScript before we can go into this. So do we all understand the basics of JavaScript, what it is we are trying to achieve with JavaScript, and the role of JavaScript itself?
Yes, I think in the last class that we did on JavaScript too, they introduced this Node.js to us. We are using it to, instead of going to web, we are using it to read our codes that we did on JavaScript. Like they said, we should connect it through terminal stuff or something.
Okay, so who can give me a very, very brief introduction to JavaScript? Just brief introduction, nothing too extensive.
Why did you put your hands down now? We can see your hand now.
Raised my hand to the first question to say if he could run through some key things he needs to be sure that we know so that we can validate that we know. But now that he has moved to someone to give a summary, my hand has to come down.
I cannot give summary.
Now.
I'm still a learner.
All right. Any other person that can give a brief walkthrough of JavaScript? Anybody?
Okay, I can start by saying JavaScript helps with interactivity, especially on web applications. The interactivity we see on various platforms, it helps to do that. We also went through seeing that there's an engine on browsers that you can interact with to help you, practice some simple commands around JavaScript. And then we went into functions. For me, that's where my own headache started. So I'll stop at that point.
Okay. Okay. I think I saw someone else put up their hands. What was that? Someone else put up his hand.
Yeah, I was the one, sorry. Got my hand since the other speaker.
That one or T1? Who's T1?
Yes, I'm responding now.
Okay.
Actually dropped the hand when someone else was speaking about what I was talking about the interactivity. We're taught that it's JavaScript that brings out the beauty of the website. And like when we press a button, like for instance, we are entering a data form, which is the JavaScript that allows us to do all that. It's kind of dynamic styling and the likes, including animation and code. I don't know if I'm right.
Yeah, you're right. So initially, when you build out websites, HTML and CSS, they are typically static websites. The need for JavaScript came up when you need dynamism added to your website. So as you update something on your page, maybe you send something to a backend or you send something to an in-memory stuff, you needed some type of way to constantly update your screens, add a bit more interactivity, add a bit more flexibility to your websites or to your web page. That's where JavaScript comes in. It gives you that dynamism, it gives you that functionality to make different, to to add different functionalities, add different stylings, expand the scope of what your web application is in a manner of speaking. But all that is resident on your browser. It does not work outside of your browser. The native JavaScript does not work outside of your browser. And then for JavaScript, there is the ease of use, there is the simplicity in its design. Please, if I'm too fast, let me know. There is
No, sir.
There is the simplicity in the way JavaScript is written, how much less verbose it is compared to programming languages like Java or C++ or C#. So because of all those advantages JavaScript has, other developers thought that, okay, why are we running this JavaScript only on the browser? Why can't we find a way to run JavaScript on our computers or servers? So it should run directly on your computers rather than running on your browser. So what powers JavaScript on your browsers is the V8 engine that is built by Google in C++. So that's what compiles JavaScript to machine language, because JavaScript is a high-level language. Most computers or most machine that it will be running on would not understand. So the V8 engine in the JavaScript, what was done now is to build a runtime environment on top of that V8 engine that interfaces directly with your machine and then executes whatever code you write in JavaScript. So NodeJS is not a framework, it is not a programming language, it is just a runtime environment that gives you access to your machine, to different features that are available on the machine that you would usually not get in your browser. And with that advantage, it also comes with things like you not having access to functionalities that you typically have access to when you are running JavaScript on the browser. So who can give me examples of things you would have access to when you're running JavaScript on the browser? Anybody?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understood the question.
Come again with the question.
Okay, so when you're running JavaScript on your browser, you know, when you're running JavaScript with your HTML files, there are certain functions, or there are certain, it's not modules per se now. There are certain properties that the HTML DOM elements will give you access to. Let me put it that way. That's not my field, but I'll just try to explain it as simply as I can. HTML DOM elements, there are certain functions and properties you get access to when you're working with JavaScript on the browser. So things like your alerts windows now, I think there is something like an alert dot something that you write. When you click on a particular button, you get a pop-up. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, we are.
So it's things like that you don't have access to when you're running JavaScript on a machine, and that's where Node.js comes in. So what Node.js is, it is an open source cross-platform JavaScript runtime environment and library for running web applications outside the client's browser. So that's what we've talked about now. Developers use Node.js to create server-side web applications, and it is perfect for data-intensive applications since it uses an asynchronous event-driven model. So what an asynchronous event-driven model is that if you know the standard definition of synchronous and asynchronous, synchronous means that let's say you write a line of code or you write a block of code, everything happens in sequence. It happens in the sequence or the order you've written it. So once a line of code is running at the top, the one after that cannot run until the current running process finishes, and then the next one picks. Once that one runs, the next one goes. Once that one runs, the next one goes. So that's what synchronous means. And where you get trade-offs with, where you get problems with running synchronous is that when you have long-running tasks, that is typically system intensive or that is resource intensive, it slows down the efficiency of your application. User experience is very, very subpar at that point. So in cases like that, you can deploy an asynchronous model whereby, let's say a line of code or a particular process is going to be long running. You can you can tell that process or tell that line of code to run in the background while your application moves on with its own, with other processes that you might need to run. Do you guys understand that?
Yes,
Yes,
I
sir.
do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so it uses V8 engine under the hood to compile JavaScript to machine code. We've talked about that one. So why choose Node.js? So the very first importance or the very first advantage Node.js gives you is that there are over 50,000 bundles available in the Node Package Manager. And for that reason, developers can import any of the packages anytime according to their needed functionality, for which a lot of time is saved. So this particular point speaks to how popular Node.js is as a runtime environment and the amount of the community that is backed or that back Node.js as a runtime environment. So there are a lot of processes, or there are a lot of things that you would want to do that is usually repetitive. So rather than reinventing the wheel, you have access to the Node Package Manager, the NPM, where different packages and different modules have been published. All you just have to do is install that one locally into your application. We'll talk about that. Install that one locally into your application, import the package, and then you get access to every procedure or everything that has been published in that package. So there's a very large community behind Node.js. So the next one, as Node.js does not need to wait for an API to return data. So for building real-time and data-intensive web applications, it is very useful. It is totally asynchronous in nature. That means it is non-blocking. So this is what we talked about. When you're using data-intensive application, that typically means that it is going to be resource intensive. And that's what most real-time applications or most enterprise applications that you would hope to be building will be working on. They will be real-time and then they will be data intensive. And once it's data intensive, it is resource intensive as well. So Node.js gives you that advantage of writing asynchronous code, of running asynchronous code such that it is non-blocking. So you can subvert that process to run in the background and then do other things. The loading time for an audio or video is reduced by Node.js because there is synchronization of the code between the clients and the server for having the same code base. So this one speaks to the fact that you have the possibility of writing your front-end application and your back-end application in JavaScript. And once you have a scenario like that, the code base would be different, but it would largely follow the same paradigm, because at the very roots of it, it is still JavaScript. So there is a level of synchronization between your client's application and your server-side application. The server-side application would, in most instances, will be your back-end application, and your client-side application will be the front-facing application or the front-end application. So loading time for audio and video is reduced. As Node.js is open source and it is nothing but a JavaScript framework, this is wrong. I made a mistake here. It is a runtime, it is not a framework. So for developers who are already used to JavaScript, for them, developing their projects with Node.js is very easy. So you don't need to learn another programming language again when you're working with Node.js. So features of Node.js, asynchronous and event-driven. I think we've talked about this one. The servers made with Node.js never waits for this thing from an API. It's our data from API, blah, blah, blah. We've talked about this one. Single-threaded architecture. With event looping, a single-threaded architecture is followed by Node.js. And for this architecture, makes Node.js more scalable. And for this architecture, it makes Node.js more scalable. In contrast to other servers, limited threads are created by them for processing the request. So this speaks to the fact that, I don't know if anybody is familiar with what a thread is in terms of computer. Does anybody want to try to define what a thread is? Muhammad, are you trying to work?
Sir?
I see your mic is on mute, or are you just on mute? Okay, so a thread in the simplest form, a thread is a sequence of software code that your computer will execute. A thread is a sequence of software code that your computer would execute. So that means that, say you have a process running now. You have a process running now. It will typically run on a single thread. It depends on how you define it. You can define your process to run on multiple threads, or you can define your process to run on one single thread. So the advantage of NodeJS is that it does not have to manage multiple threads. It has just one singular thread that it is going to it has to manage. If you understand, if that makes sense, it's just one singular process it is going to manage. So where asynchronous or non-blocking comes in is that rather than having your code run on that singular thread or having multiple threads for your Node.js runtime to manage, it is just that singular thread, but then you can revert long running tasks to run in the background. There are sub processes on your computer that you can tell various processes running on your application to run on. But it's just that singular thread you can use to run various processes on your application. So that makes it less intensive and easier to manage for the runtime environments. Singular threaded architecture, scalable. Nowadays, scalable software is demanded by most of the companies you'll be working with. One of the most pressing concerns in software development is addressed by Node.js, and that is scalability. Concurrent requests can be handled very efficiently using Node.js. A cluster module is used by Node.js for managing the load balancing for all the active CPU cores. This is a lot of English. What this just means is that if you need more resources or if you need to expand the scope of your Node.js project, it is very, very easy to do that. That's what scalability means in terms of, in this context here. You can customize it however you want. You can scale up or scale down however you want. That's what Node.js gives you here. Quick execution time for code. V8 JavaScript runtime motor is used by Node.js. We talked about this, and this is also used by Google Chrome. It is a wrapper provided for the JavaScript, and for that reason, the runtime motor becomes faster inside Node.js. So because of it's running on V8 and on Google's V8 engine, which is very, very advanced, and it has been fine-tuned to work efficiently with JavaScript, you get very, very fast execution time. Compatibility on cross-platform. So Node.js, all you just have to do is install, and then you can start running regardless of your operating system, be it Windows, Unix, Linux, that's this thing, and then macOS and other mobile devices that has the ability to run Node.js. So you don't need to do anything fancy to get it to run. Just install Node.js on your system, and then you're good to go. And then it uses JavaScript. This is the very basics of it. Node.js uses JavaScript, or you write JavaScript in Node.js. So far, so good. You guys understand? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's a lot of theory, but once as we go ahead, it will become clearer.
All right.
So setting up your environments, you install the latest long-term support version of Node.js. I'm sure you would have installed Node.js in previous classes.
Yes, sir.
If you've not done that, this is the link to download that. Okay, you already said you've done that. This is the link to download, and you can verify the installation using node-v. Let me bring up my command prompts. Let's type node-v. You can see the version of Node I'm running on my system. And then you can start the node shell simply by entering node. And here you can write anything that you typically write in your, any JavaScript code, any valid JavaScript code. You can write it at 2+2 for, you can write as extensive and as long as you probably want. You can do that. But ideally, you will be building large-scale software, and it is not advisable to be writing your code in your command prompt or in your terminal. So you'll probably be using an IDE. So most popular is VS Code. I'm sure you have VS Code installed as well.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me bring up my VS Code. So if I create a new file, enter file name, introduction.js. Create it on desktop. Create file. So since NodeJS is a JavaScript file, it uses the .js extension. So if I do console.log hello world. I'm sure you would have done this before, but just for the sake of sanity. And then to run a Node.js file, you bring up the integrated terminal in Visual Studio Code, and then you write node, and then the file name you're trying to run, introduction.js. Requires sorry, I'm trying to set up something. Okay. I'm not in the file
Directory.
Yeah, I'm not in the file directory. So if I run node introduction, yes. So you can see the hello world. And with this, you simply run a Node.js project. And from here, you can go ahead and do and undo as you wish. So the next thing we'll talk about is basics of Node.js. So for this particular course, it is going to be a lot of hands-on and writing and actually running code rather than looking at PowerPoint videos, because that would not do justice to what it is we are trying to achieve. So global objects in Node.js, they are akin to window objects that you have when you're running code in your browser. So I'm sure you can write functions. Let me just quickly write a sample function here. So you can see that everything you can typically write in your JavaScript with HTML and CSS. That's hello is equal to this function will take a name and then
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry, could you make your
Okay.
VS Code bigger?
all right. Apologies. Is it better this way?
Yeah, it's a lot better. Thank you.
Okay.
Console log just return And then here you can just call the function hello and then pass in a name. Baruch array. You save that and then you run. So you don't typically need to include the extension name, and you run regardless. So like I was saying, the window object is similar to the global object in NodeJS is similar to the window object you would have in your JavaScript. So let me bring up my Chrome, bring up my console specs. Console. So if I type window, you see the window object, and from here you get access to various functions. See, these are the alerts I was talking about. Cookie store, fetch, location bar, and so on. So if you do the same for yeah, let's see if this works. I think this has a console.log global this. Let's comment this one else. Save. So for your changes to make effect, you have to save it and then rerun again. So this is the global object with a lot of functions. It's even more than this. I don't know why it is just this, but these are the functions. So ideally, what you'll be using is set interval, set timeout, clear interval, clear timeout, and so on. So what set timeout does is let's see what set timeout does. Set timeouts. Are you guys familiar with what a callback function is?
Yes, sir.
All right, so in your set timeouts, it takes a callback function. It takes two parameters, a callback function and milliseconds in time. Let's say you push 3,000 seconds, and then I say console.log callback as run. If I save this and I run, can you see my terminal? Do you see what happened in my terminal?
Yes, sir.
So the callback function we wrote, it ran at exactly 3 seconds. So that's what set timeout does. Whatever you specify in your callback function, it will run at the time you specify at the second parameter. So the time is in milliseconds. So I put 3,000 milliseconds, which is equivalent to 3 seconds. So the flip side of that is set interval. What this one does is it takes a callback function as well, and then an interval to which that function should run. So that typically means as the specified interval on every second. So for instance, now if you say every 1,000 milliseconds, so whatever is inside that callback function will run every 1 second. So I think I've already copied this. So callback interval has run. So let me comment this. Okay, now let me leave this here so you can see what would happen when you have those two. So interval has run 3 seconds, and then you get your callback has run. So this, if you have any continuous task you would like to run, you can use something like a set interval to run that continuously, however long you want it to run. So these are just a few of what you get access to when you initialize or when you use the global objects. So another thing you have access to once you log your directory name __ their name And then you have access to your file name as well. Let me just copy this. Underscore file name. So what this will do is it will log to the console where the current directory, the file you are working with, is located. And what the second one will do is log to the console the current file you are working with. So if I stop this with Ctrl+C, save and run again. So I'm working on my desktop and the file I'm working with is introduction.js. So there are instances where you would need access to the file you are working with or access to the directory you are working in. So is that clear? You guys understand what the global object is?
That's it. That's
Any
it.
questions so far? Any questions? I'll take the silence as no question and move on. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is modules. Modules are like JavaScript libraries that can be used in a Node.js application to include a set of functions. In order to include a module in a Node.js application, use the require function with the parentheses containing the name of the module you are trying to import. So how best to explain this is when you're working on an enterprise grade application, or when you're, don't let us even talk about enterprise grade application. When you're working on a large scale application, not even necessarily a large scale application, when you're working on any application, writing in just one singular file becomes very, very cumbersome, very, very fast. So you may need to have multiple files that hold multiple processes. You may need to have multiple files that holds multiple processes, and you need those processes, or you need the return of one function or the response from one logic in another file you are working in. So let's say I create a new file here now, not txt file. I'll rename it. JavaScript. Okay. Name that one. So say I specify in this file here, in the new file I just created, an array of names of people is equal to our names. My name is Farouk. So say so I just saved the file now. So say I need to use this variable here that I've created in names.js. Say I need to use it in introduction.js. Say I want to write a simple function that says hello, that loops through the array, that loops through this array, and then says hello to each of these names here. I'll need some way to import or to use what I've defined here in this place. Do you understand? So what I can do is using the syntax I defined, you can create a variable import is equal to require. So this is the statements you will typically use to import import files. So I'll define the location of the file. So because we are working in the, okay, this is the error I'm getting here is because the import statement is not allowed as a variable declaration name. So this is a reserved keyword. I cannot use it as a variable name, so I can define name inputs. And then I require the file name I want to use, name.js. And then I save, let's console log name imports. Now save and run. Who can care to guess what it is we are going to get back as a response? Who can care to guess? So let me do something first. Let me run the name.js file so that you see that there is actually.
Sorry,
I think it will
sorry, before you
bring
go, won't you have gotten an error? The name of this file is names. What you have there is name.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. Names.js. So let me actually run this file. So node names. So you can see the array of names posted here in my terminal. Is my screen legible enough?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so who can get to guess what would happen when I run name import?
And it will bring out Farouk Are Ayomide.
Okay, let's run that and see if that is correct.
Semicolon.
JavaScript typically does not need that, but cannot find module names.js. We're in the same file, names.js is in the same file. Let me just move the file around. Let me create a folder for this project. I think the fact that I'm working on my desktop, it's messing with it. Just give me a second here. This. I trust function. If I bring up my terminal, and then I run node introduction. So where we left off is
Last time we had this error, sir.
Yeah, where we left off is we had this error. So this is the error here.
We had to create package.
Cannot find module names.js / names.js. So looking at this one, I can already tell that the way I have tried to import this is not correct. So I need to define a path to the file I am trying to import. So that would typically go something like dot. This means that look inside the current folder I am in. That's what this essentially says. Look inside the current folder I'm in, and then look for a file, names.js. So let's see if that resolves the error we are getting. And then I run node introduction.
Yes.
So what this name import does, let me open this names file. What this name import does is it essentially runs this entire file. That's why you can see the response here, this console log people here. That's why you can see it here. It essentially goes through this file, runs everything that is there, and then runs the next line here. So let me put an identifier here. So you can see an empty curly brace on this line. Let me put introduction, save, and just to show you that what is running where. So introduction, empty braces. So ideally, we need access to people that is in names.js. So if I do console log, we've already imported the file now. If I do people, string array, and I save and I try to run, who can care to guess what would come out? Anybody? What will be the
Passing
response?
the array, we are passing the name inside these curly braces.
We are passing the name where?
Inside the curly braces.
Inside the curly braces. That is one answer. Any other person? So what we are trying to do now is we are trying to get access to the people variable we defined in names.js.
Yes.
Have you? So if I run that, I get an error that says people is not defined. So you can see here, you get the people, you get the console log that is in names.js, but on trying to render or on trying to log to the console introduction people, you get an error that people is not defined. And the reason for this error is that you've only imported the names.js file into your current project. You've not yet exported the variables you want to use inside your introduction file. So it's a two-step process. You have to export what you want to use, and then you import it back inside wherever you want to use it. So to do that, I can simply say module dot export. So this module exports people. So if I go back here and I say, let me log to the console name imports now, save everything, and then run again. So you can see the array. So this is what this file exports, name imports. It exports that array. So I can as well export an object. I can export, let me use something, names, people. I save that as well. So whatever I exported, you get access to it here. So you guys kind of get the general sense of imports and exports. So this is when you are working with multiple files in the same project on your own local machine. So if you want to import modules that have been baked into NodeJS, there are default modules that come with NodeJS as soon as you install it on your system. So things like the HTTP module for creating a web server, the FS module for accessing your file system, and the rest. Those ones come pre-baked with your Node.js. So if I remove this one now and I say FS, so the typical convention is to name the variable the same as the name of the module you're trying to run. And then if I log to the console FS, you get access to a bunch of features from your file system, and I save and I run. So you can see a lot of, so I'll show you how to read a file from a file system, how to write a file to your file system. Yeah, how to make a directory, how to delete a directory. So we work with one of the built-in modules. We would also work with third-party packages that have been published on NPM. So let's go ahead and do the simple. Okay, so there is also, let me talk about this, the OS module. So if you need information about your operating system, you can get that as well from the OS module. So os.platform. If I save that to the console and log. Okay, so I see that I'm running on a 32-bit Windows system. I hope you guys are following along. Or at least trying
But we
to.
cannot see the screen, sir.
Eh?
We didn't see the output of this OS.
You did not see you can see my screen, Abby.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
now
so
it's
let me
coming up.
just wish that. Platform, and I save. If you look at my terminal now, so you can see the platform. Can you see the response now?
Yes, sir.
So this tells me that I'm running on a Windows system. I can also get the home directory. If I run this, so this is my home directory, C, users, HP, and a bunch of other things that you have access to. So you can go online and then read up on default modules. I'll show you, I think, two. I'll work with the file system module. I'll also work with the HTTP module. So if I uncomment this file system, require the file system. So there are instances when you are building applications that you need access to files on your local machine. So let's say I create a new file here, and then I call it sample.txt, and then this is the sample now for the big academy. So I save. So what I want to do now is I want to read this file from my file system. So I'll say file system.read file. Read file. You can read the file synchronously and asynchronously. So at this point now, I'm sure you already understand the concept of reading the file synchronously and asynchronously. So if the file is a large file, if it's a small file, you can read it synchronously. If it's a large file, you can read it asynchronously. But the process of reading file from the file system itself is a resource-intensive process. So we typically read it synchronously. So this function takes in two parameters, as you can see from the IntelliSense that VS Code provides. It takes in the path. So this specifies the path to the file you're trying to interact with, and then it takes in a callback function of options. Somebody talking. Okay. So it takes in the path as the first parameter, and then the second parameter is a callback function of options that you can work with. So let me define that. So this is for the path. I'll say in the current folder, I am in for sample.txt. So that's that, and then the callback function. The callback function itself takes in two parameters, an error parameter this one you get access to if there's an error while reading the file, and then the data itself that you're trying to read. So if I specify error and data, so I can now say, I can do a check if there is an error, then log to the console the error. Else, I can log to the console the data in string formats. Dot to string. So what this to string does is it decodes whatever it is that you're getting back as data, and the data parameter that is defined there is a buffer. So it's kind of like bytes. What the machine code will understand in the manner of speaking is not what you are able to read. It is kind of like bytes that is fed back from the read process. So if I save this and I run, so you can see the response of what is in that sample.txt file that I created. This is a sample file for DevLink Academy. So what happens if I specify a name that is not, a file name that is not available in our system? Let me put this here. Save and then run. So you can see the defined, the check I put here. So you can see the error. It says no such file or directory trying to open, say users HP documents devlink sample.txt. So you have a nice error message that you can use to handle whatever it is you're trying to handle. So the same way you can read from a file, let me just put some comments here. Read file. The same way you can read from a file, you can write to a file. So to write to a file, you can use fs.write file. So what this write file takes, the write file takes two parameters: the file you're trying to write to and the data you are trying to write to the file. It actually takes in three parameters. The file you're trying to write to, the data you're trying to write into that file, and then a callback function that does not take any parameter. This callback function is only called when the write process has been completed, or if there is an error while writing. No, there will typically be no error while writing to the file, and I'll show you why that is. Excuse me. So let's say I want to write back to sample.txt, and I want to write, this is a test to writing to down, and then the callback function. Function takes that, and I log to the console. Excuse me. And I log to the console that I have been.
Sir, it's time to pray.
It's time to pray. Oh, okay. Let's take a 10 minutes break to accommodate for
All right, sir. Thank you, sir.
observing Salas. If you have any questions, well, we take that short break. Please feel free to ask. Any questions? I hope I've not been too fast. Hello.
Sir, there's no problem since there's a video record.
Okay. All right.
Inkem, can you hear us? Dayo, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Mr. Johnson, can you hear us? Mohammed, read one.
We can hear you, sir.
Right, continue, Farouk.
Okay, so where we left off, where we left off was trying to write to a file. So I had already provided the syntax for writing to a file. That's specify the file name and what it is we are trying to write to a file, and then the callback function that would run when the file has been written into. So if I not this, let me comment this one out. Save, and then rerun. So we have file has been written. So if I open sample.txt, you can see that you can see the text we wrote into this file. So what I would like, okay, let me even do the next one. So if I duplicate this and then try to write to a file that doesn't exist, who can care to guess what would happen? If I try to write to a file that doesn't exist.
Would it create it?
Yeah, it would create it for us. You get sample1.txt. So that's why I was saying you will typically not get errors trying to write to a file, because if the file does not exist, it will create it for you. And so that's sample1.txt. What I want you guys to do for me very quickly is, if you see sample.txt, there was a file, there was something there before. What I want you guys to do for me is try to look up how we can append to the end of the file rather than overwriting what was in the file. You guys understand? So append to the end of the file rather than overwriting the file. If that makes sense. So it can take like 5 to 10 minutes to try to go online, make a bit of research, and then let me know what you come up with.
No more audio, sir.
What? Somebody say something.
I can't hear anything again.
So I said you should, I gave you a small task to do.
Ah. Okay.
Did you not get the premise of the task?
I didn't get it.
And so what I said was that writing to a file, so we wrote to a sample.txt,
Okay.
and there was content in it before, but when we wrote to the file, it's essentially cleared the contents of what was there before, and then overwrote onto
another
what
one.
was there. So what I want you to do is, rather than overwriting the file, just append to the end of the file.
to append to the end of the
Now,
file.
maybe we should use a method append file.
You get.
Don't understand.
So are we going to do that as an assignment, or
No, just
we are to do it right away?
you can do
I've
it
seen
right
an
now.
append file. We use
You said?
instead of we using the method, instead of we using write to file, we use append to file method. We call up that method and pass in the argument.
Okay, that's what there are multiple ways to go around. I just want you to be able to go online, look up problems to whatever tasks it is you're trying to accomplish. So just to sharpen your problem solving skills and your research skills. That's
Okay, so
yeah. So the next thing we'll talk about is working with directories. Can we go ahead?
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Okay. So I comment this one out now. And then I'm going to use directories. So what I want to do is I want to create a directory, make directory. So this one will typically take in from your IntelliSense, the path, options, and callback function. So currently we are not using options, so we'll just specify the path to the directory or folder it is we are trying to create, and then a callback function. And this callback function takes in one parameter, and that's the error parameter. And the same thing we did here. Comments. If error, console log the error else. So here there is no data. So what we want to do is just add an identifier that folder created. So if I set this and I run, you get the name folder created, and you can see in my file explorer here, you can see the new directory I created. So if I try to create it again, I should get an error that the file already exists. So what I can do here is that I can check if the file exists. So I use an if statement, and then I get access to something called, I get access to if fs.exists sync, and then I specify the path. So all these things that I'm writing, they are inbuilt functions, just to show you what it is the module can do when you import it. So it's not something you are required to memorize or try to put everything to mind. You can always go online to search for all these things if you think you've forgotten them or if you need them. So I will specify new directory, check if the new directory exists. So this one would return a Boolean, true or false, if the path exists. So what I want to do is, if the path exists, I don't want to create this. I want to delete that particular directory. If it exists, I want to do fs.remove rm remove directory. This one to takes the path of where I'm trying to delete without. It also takes a callback with error as well. Also load folder deleted. So here I specify an else statement. I move this one down. So what I've just done is if the file system exists, remove it, else create a new one. So if I save this and I run, we should get folder deleted now because it exists. Folder deleted, and you can see in my Explorer that has gone. If I do introduction again, you can see folder created. So that's how to delete a folder. To delete a file is pretty similar as long as you just know the syntax, you can delete it. So to delete a file, I do fs.onlink. It takes the path to the file. /sample.txt. It also takes a callback function as well with error statements, with error parameter rather. Equal to cancel log. File deleted. If I save that, I run, pay attention to my terminal. The file should delete and the file has deleted. So that's basically it working with the file system. Any questions? Please, I would like to take any questions. So I can assume that you understand the little I've said about modules, working with modules, working with the file system module.
Yes.
Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is mostly theoretical for now. Next thing I want to talk about is clients and servers. You can kind of infer because I've hinted at it at the beginning. Clients and servers, that would typically most times refer to the front end of your application and the back end of the application. So most modern day applications, they try to do separation of concerns in the sense that typically or normally you can have your front end and back end in just one singular MVC application. That's model view controller, such that it's the same application that powers your front end, the same application that powers your back end, so that front end application can talk to your database directly. But most times you would like, you should strive for separation of concerns, such that you know that the logic of front end is somewhere else, the logic of back end is somewhere else. So that helps if you want to troubleshoot something on the application. You know that, okay, how are the interactions working? Okay, the interactions are fine. I can now check that to see whether it's my APIs or whether they are in my endpoints that are working properly. So that's why we have front end and we have the back end. So most times when you're on your front end application, you're essentially, and you're building a dynamic application, you will be sending requests to a backend application somewhere that is not really your concern. So how do those requests response cycle work? So NodeJs is the one that, in this case, will power the backend of your application. NodeJs is the one that will power the backend of the application, and then you have maybe like a React or a Vue powering your front-end applications. And then your user side sends requests to your Node.js application. So what we are trying to do in a nutshell is trying to write the logic or try to handle the requests that that will eventually be sent to our application. So what this Node.js course is about is just to give you a brief overview, because most times nowadays you will not be using Node.js to write your applications. It's the next one we are going to cover. That's Next.js. And you're going to be using to write whatever it is you're writing. But I just wanted to give you a brief introduction into what Node.js is. So as I was saying, clients and servers. So let's say you hit www.google.com now. The process that happens between you pressing enter and then google.com coming up, it's kind of like a request response cycle where you already have your domain name. That's google.com, that is mapped to an IP address. I'm sure we're all familiar with what IP addresses are.
Yes.
Okay, so every computer on the internet has a unique identifier. That's the IP address. So you enter google.com, domain name is resolved to an IP address that eventually receives your request, and then the backend application handles that request and then generates a response for you. That's more or less the long and short of what it is. That whole request response cycle is from the client side, as regards the client side and as regards the server side. So you send a request to your front-end application, to your back-end application to get some response from it that you then render out to your users or whoever it is you're building the application for. So let me create a new file. Server.js. So for us to create something to handle requests from our backend, we need to create a server that would handle requests from wherever, be it a front-end application, a mobile application, another server-side application as well. We need a server-side to do that. And so for us to do that, I can call, I use a module, an in-use module, the HTTP module, require HTTP. So if I save, let's save yet. Let's just see what's in the HTTP module as well. Save and then run node server, and then I press enter. So these are the properties and the functions you get access to. Methods, the status codes, and so on and so forth. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to create a server that will handle requests. So to do that, I define a variable. So these are pretty standard nomenclatures that you don't have to memorize. I mean, once you get working with it, if you're writing codes directly in Node.js, you would be pretty familiar with it. So create server takes a callback function. A callback, it takes a request parameter and a response parameter. Request response. And then I define the callback function. And in the callback function, I say console log a simple string that a request was made. So here I've created the server that I want to use to handle the requests. So at this point, I am not yet listening for requests. I just created a server, excuse me. I just created a server to handle requests. So to listen for requests, I can say server.listen, and then I can specify the ports Okay, so that brings me to the next point of notes. Who can quickly give me a brief highlight of what a port is in relation to IP addresses?
IP address is like the identity of the whole computer. And I think a port is like a specific location through which you can access that computer.
Yes. That's exactly what it is. So you can think of what I like to use if I'm explaining these things is an apartment building. So you have the general address that signifies the entire apartment, and you have specific maybe house numbers or block numbers, apartments 1A, apartments 1B in number so and so streets in a particular place. So that's the whole idea of what IP addresses and ports are. You can think of ports as points of access to various applications that are running on your system, because every server, every computer, fine, you can have just the singular application running on one server, but for maximum efficiency, most times you have multiple applications running on a server. Jesus. You can have multiple applications running on a server. Yeah, and then you need specific ways to identify each of those applications running on that server, and that's where your port comes in. So when we are listening for requests, we need to specify a port to listen for requests on. So I can specify port 3000 and then save. Okay, I can also specify the host name of where I want the application to listen on. So here I'm using local hosts. This local host, if you're running on your local system, it maps to a loopback IP address. That's essentially the IP address of your system, and that's 127.0.0.1. That's the loopback IP address of your system. So the same way you have google.com resolve to whatever IP address google.com is running on, that's the same way this local host as well. Excuse me. That's the same way this local host as well would resolve to this loopback IP 127.0.0.1. And then I can specify a callback function. I can specify a callback function. I can specify a callback function to signify that our server is listening for requests successfully. Listening now. So if I save this and run node server, excuse me, let me comment this one out. Save and run node server. Now I'm listening for requests. If I bring up my web browser and I go to local, let me put this one side by side. Can you still see my screen?
Yes,
so you can see my
yeah.
browser now and the terminal. So if I go to
Yes.
localhost 3000 and I press enter. So in my terminal now, you can see initially, let me stop this. Show that. Initially, I just get listening now. I don't get this log to the console request was made because I have not made any request at that point. So once I hit enter on localhost port 3000, because that's where this simple server we've created is running on, you can see the log that you say a request was made. And that we've created a simple server in its most basic form that will now listen for or handle whatever requests enters local host on port 3000. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. So the same way we logged to the console to signify that a request was made, we can as well log the request object to the console. So let's log the request object to the console and see what's inside there. No server listening now. So we can see the request objects. We get access to a bunch of functions, headers, the URL, the method of the request, cookies, HTTP version, and so on and so forth. So let's try to access the request.url and the method. Request.url and request.method. I save that, stop the server and rerun. If I hit, so now we can see the URL is the base URL and it's the get requests. So which requests, they are, when you're building applications, you typically build around four processes, or you typically, most applications will typically have 4 core functionalities, and those are termed as the CRUD operations. So the CRUD operations are, you can either create something in your application, you can read or retrieve something in your application, you can update something that is existing on your application, or you can delete something that is existing on your application. So those CRUD operations are mapped to HTTP action methods. They are mapped to HTTP action methods that denote what it is you're trying to do in terms of request or responses. And for creating a resource or for a create action on your system, you will typically use the post method. For reading or retrieving something from your system, you will typically use the get method. For updating something on your system, you use put or patch. So put is if you want to update the entire resource or the entire object or an entirety of something that is resident on your application. But patch is if you want to update parts of something that is resident on your application. And then the delete method to delete something in your application. So because the type of request here, the type of request we are trying to make is a get request, you can see the HTTP get method here, and you can see the route as /. So if I define hello here, you can see this, you can see the URL path here, hello, as we've defined. Sorry, please give me a second. I want to get my charger. All right, again, apology for that break. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so before I go on, do you guys understand all what I've talked about?
Honestly, sir, I have issues. Sir.
All right. What issues are you having?
I'm seeing this server variable that we created.
Okay.
We're passing this callback method create server, but I didn't know this request and this these two parameters that we're passing.
Request and response.
Exactly, sir. I don't know how it does the magic.
How it does, oh, that's the beauty of Node.js. So when you initialize a server object, it injects that request and response for you.
Automatically.
Is a default parameter and that is injected for you and is available for you to use. So it's the runtime that does that for you. Because you're creating a server that would have access to a request and that will need to send a response out. These are the parameters you use to handle those.
Oh,
So it's provided by the Node.js runtime for you from the HTTP module.
okay, sir. I've seen this one. So okay, sir.
You guys understand? Any questions?
From my part.
Any other questions? The request response cycle, client servers. Are you guys okay with my explanation so far?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we already have access to the request objects. So if you can see my browser, you will see that we are just loading. Can you see the whatever this is called in the browser? You can sure see that the request is just loading. It's because here we did not return back any response. We did not return back any response to our browser to signify the end of that request response cycle. So everything is a cycle of requests and responses, responses. You get?
Yes, sir.
So what we can do now is we can say, so the very first thing to do, I will do it the crude way, res dots. We need to specify the type of response we are sending back. So we set the header and we define content type. Content type, we define that as text plain, as a plain text that we are sending back.
Yes.
So it's a three-step process, and then we write the response. Res dots write hello dev link. And then we signify that we finished writing and we want to end the response. So what do? We write the header, we set the header, we set the content type in the header, we write the response, and then we signify that we want to end. So if I save this and I run, so what happens? Node server, we are listening for requests now. So if I press enter, we can see the response here. Hello dev link. So with that, any request that comes into our application, yeah, on port 3000, we'll always get back this response, hello dev link. Any request, because that's what we've defined here. And with computers, it is GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. It cannot do beyond what it is you've defined it to do. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
It cannot do beyond what it is you define it. So even if we go to a /hello, as long as it's post 3000, you will still get hello dev link. Do you understand?
Yes.
You will
Yes,
still
sir.
get hello dev link. So what I want to do now is I want us to create a mechanism to kind of differentiate when we go to different routes, or I want us to define different routes on our simple application now. Abi? We should define different routes on our simple application that would handle different requests on those routes, and then we'll generate a response. So who can tell me how we do that, or how we can possibly achieve that?
Can you come over the question again, sir?
Okay, so currently, regardless of the routes we try to access on our system, if I do localhost 3000, it still gives me hello dev link. If I do localhost hello, it still gives me hello dev link. If I do localhost Farouk, it still gives me hello dev link. So what I want us to do, or what we are trying to achieve now, is we are trying to send back different responses for different routes.
Okay.
You employ conditional statement.
Conditional statements, okay?
Yeah.
That's one part of it. Based on what?
On the request.
What part of that request are we going to deploy the conditional statement on? What part of the request are we going to deploy the conditional statement on? Any suggestions? Remember, it is based on the
Okay, in the write hello dev link, I think the next command, if that end is the end that is making it to stop in the hello dev link, maybe
Yes.
in between the write and the request write and the request end, if the if command is there, in order to give another command of bringing in another information.
That's not correct, but I like the efforts. Anybody else wants to try? So let me give you a hint. Remember that it is based on whatever parts here, whatever changes here that we want to change. So if this changes to hello, I want something different to change. If this changes to home, okay, let's say we want to create a web application, and we'll have the home page, we'll have the contact us, we'll have the about page. So if this is home, we want to render the home page. If this is about, we want to render the about page. If this is contacts, we want to render the contacts page. So what in our application can we change, or how can we change our application to accommodate that change? Anybody? Just try. I just want to hear something. All right. So remember I talked about the request.url. When we log to the console request.url. So if you see, that's why I left this open here. If you see, when we've been making those requests, you can see in the terminal here, you can see the information that we are receiving here. We are getting the paths contacts, about, home, hello. So somebody spoke about conditional statements. That was correct to an extent. But what you now need to do is use the conditional statements on the request.url. Do you understand? So you specify that if the request.url is equal to home, you render the home page. If the request.url is about, you render the about page. If the request.url is contact, you render the contact page. And rather than sending back a plain text, you can send an HTML document here. Who can tell me what will change to send to respond with an HTML document in the content type? So we just have to change the content type to define that as an HTML document. So here we define content type HTML, and then we do the usual. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a little bit of HTML.
Yes, we are.
Okay. So we can just write a head tag there, or a p tag. Inside here. So we can put the p tag here, hello Devlin, and then put another paragraph. Excuse me. And then put another paragraph pasting there. And then we send. Okay, let's just see that so we can see now that we have is the HTML this email. So now we can write a conditional statement. Okay, so what I want you to do is write a conditional statement that acts on this request.url. So you just essentially say if request.url is equal to /contact, because you can see what the response is here.
Yes.
If the request.url is equal to /contact, just 3 routes. If it is equal to home, if you just return back a string that this is the home page. If it is equal to about, just return back a string, this is the about page. If it is equal to contact, just return back a string that this is the contact page. And I think you have break now, so. There's a break now, Abby.
Break is by 2, sir.
Yes, sir.
It's already 2 o'clock.
Oh, it's true. It's 2:06.
Okay, so let's quickly go for the break, and then we'll come back where we left off. Is that
Okay,
fine?
sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right, let me share my screen, share my screen. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
All right, so where did we leave off? If I remember correctly. Okay, so what we were trying to do was to essentially conditional routing based on whatever path that has been defined. Yeah?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I wanted you guys to do a quick task for me on conditional routing, such that if you go to /home, you will get HTML response that this is the home page. If you go to the about page, you get an HTML response that this is the about page. And if you go to a contact us page, you get an HTML page that this is the contact page. And then you now specify a case for if the route entered does not match what you have defined in your system. So essentially a not exist page or a not found page. So do you guys understand the task? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You understand the task, Abi?
I'm yet to have a deep understanding about the task.
Okay, so you know what? What I'll do is just let that one be like your assignment. I'll let that one be your assignment. So I'll buttress it out a little bit. And then you guys will take that one as your assignments. So let's move on.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
Let's move on. So I guess you guys are familiar with the Node Package Manager.
Load what?
Node package
Node Package
manager,
Manager.
NPM.
NPM.
Okay.
Are you guys familiar with NPM?
So let's assume we are all seeing it, starting it,
No.
we are hearing it for the first time.
No, not for no.
Okay. Okay. So you know, I said something about building when I started the class. I said something about building functionalities
Yes,
that
sir.
are repeated or that other people have worked on before.
Yes, sir.
So rather than having you build out all those functionalities, you can go to the Node Package Manager. You can think of Node Package Manager as repository of existing packages that has been built by other developers and that is available for use to you as a developer. So rather than reinventing the wheel, you can just get access to a lot of packages that other developers has designed or have worked with. And if you have a package that you feel like, oh, this package will be worthwhile, people would use this, you can as well publish that to the Node Package Manager. So the website for the Node Package Manager, npmjs.com.
Sir,
Yeah?
I have a simple question, sir.
All right, go ahead.
What is the difference between package and library?
Package and library. It
Yes, sir.
depends on the context of what it is you are talking about. Are you talking about from a runtime context, application context, a framework context?
Okay, let me relate to my experience with Java, sir.
Okay.
In Java, you create a class, and that class that has a encapsulated method inside, and you package it as a package, and that one can be related as a library.
Can you come again?
In Java, we created a class.
Okay.
Inside class, we have an encapsulated method that can be reused. Or let me just say we create an object. So,
so
you import that object in another code and make use of the method inside.
So a lot of the time, all these things are usually interchangeable. So what a package is a collection of related modules that are bundled together for distribution and reuse. So related modules that you bundle together that you want to distribute to other developers or use in other packages is you can bundle all those ones under a package. For a library is a collection of pre-written code or functions that will provide some form of functionality as well that can be reused by other programs or projects. So they are pretty similar in what they do. They are pretty similar in what they do. So is essentially bundling of code for reuse or for distribution. So I would say, depending on the context, they are similar. They are interchangeable.
I understand.
Okay, so for the Node package manager, that's where you get access to reusable components in Node.js. So to use to set up our project to use Node package manager. So that's us using third-party packages that don't come pre-bundled with Node.js. Do you understand? So to use that, we can initialize this project to track the packages we install. So if I type npm init, oh, sorry. So I would, so yeah, I can type npm init here. I have to be not it. So this is this npm init. What this does, it helps you create some form of way for you to be able to track the packages in your application. So when you're building a large-scale application or an enterprise-grade application, as the case may be, you will typically use maybe 10 to 15 packages, depending on how you set up your project. So let me run through the setup and you see that. So you specify the name of the package. You can use the default one, devlink version 1, default present that description. You can leave that one empty. Entry points, introduction.js. So this will be the entry points into the application. Test command, you can leave that one empty. Git repository, leave it empty. Keyword, leave it empty. So I'm just pressing enter, enter, enter. Is this okay? Yes. So you see that a package.json file is created.
It's created.
Yeah. With the name, version, description, main entry file, the scripts. If you want to start your server, test, author, and license. So what this package.json file does is, say we look up in the node, let me look for a quick Lodash. If I look for Lodash, so this is a package in the npm repository. And then I install Lodash. If I install Lodash now, save Lodash. So what this Lodash package does, here's the definition. Let's go to so there are a ton of packages. It's a modern JavaScript library that delivers modularity, performance. Why Lodash? Lodash makes JavaScript easier by taking the hassle out of working with arrays, objects, numbers, and strings. So some of the functionalities it gives you is iterating efficiently through arrays, objects, and strings, manipulating and testing value, creating composite functions. So you can see here now in my package.json file, two things happened when I did npm install Lodash. In my package.json file, it's created a dependencies objects. And then it specified Lodash and the version that was created. And then you can see the node modules folder with the Lodash properties or the things that Lodash requires to work. So by typically when you're working with large scale applications, you're usually going to be tracking your applications with Git for version control. I'm sure you were introduced to Git by one of our previous tutors. You understand the concept of Git and what it aims to achieve, Abi? Hello, guys.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you're working on large scale applications and you need to track with some form of version control, maybe for the sake of posterity, or if you're not the only developer working on it, you use some form of version control to organize your code and then track the progress. So when you're working on large scale applications like that, this your node modules folder tends to become a lot, it tends to take up a lot of space that is ideally not suited for transference to your version control system, be it a GitHub or a Bitbucket and so on and so forth. So if I delete this node modules folder now, and I run, it's deleting, and I run npm install. So it goes into the package.json file, it checks the dependencies, and then it installs these dependencies that are there. So the package.json file is more or less to enhance modularity of the application and make it easier to work with across various platforms. So rather than sharing all those excess part of code that you can easily just reinstall back, excuse me, use the package.json to keep track of that. And then you can install in whatever system or wherever you're trying to work with. So in my introduction.js, the same way I imported the FS module, I can as well import the Lodash. So at this point now, it is now how I try to distinguish them is that once they are in the npm repository, is a package. Once it has entered my system, it becomes a module that is available to me, a local module, not the default NodeJs module. So this is the syntax. And for whatever package you're trying to work with, there is always going to be documentation on how to use the package. So this is the syntax here to use this package. So if I define const underscore, this is usually this is how they say you should import it. So require, if I require Lodash.
It's almost like
If I require Lodash and I log to the console, what's underscore is.
But so this Lodash is I'm sorry.
Yeah?
Is it a kind of package?
Yes, it is. So this is it on the npm repository here. So it's a package to make working with arrays and objects easier.
Array and objects.
Yes. So if you look at the documentation for Lodash now, lodash.com. Let me make this larger. So you can see documentation. So when you want to work with arrays, you can check the difference by difference with find index, first flatten the arrays, slice, take, collections, objects, date, functions. So it helps when you're working with, when you want to work with arrays and so on and so forth, like that.
I understand.
So if I save this and I try to run this, let's see if this runs. Introduction. So you can see the Lodash
Methods
and properties. So you can, this is not required for, I'm just showing you how you can import packages, third-party packages and the likes into your application. So you find the package you want to use, npm, you import it into your application, look at the documentation, look at how you want to use it, and then import. So a lot of the time, you would only maybe typically import a package after you've gone online, made some research. When you're having a problem and you go online to make research on how to solve that problem, you will typically be recommended the package. If there are packages that solves that problem, then you can come to your npm repository and then install that package. So that's essentially what npm is all about. The node package manager.
Node package manager. Okay.
Any questions?
No, it's okay, sir, on this part.
Any questions? No questions. So let me give you like 5 minutes to kind of assimilate all what we've said or all what we've talked about.
Pardon?
Okay, so I think I should give you that task now. It cannot be an assignment because I want to move on to something else that would make that process a lot simpler. So let me is going to be in twofold. Set up an HTTP server to handle requests on 3 routes. That's on 3 routes. On 3 routes, home routes, about routes, and contact routes. Responses should be simple HTML documents with paragraph. It's a with a simple message. Read from your file system. All right, can you see the task here? Hello, guys.
Yes, sir. Good day.
Okay, so what I want you to do for me in, let's say, 20 minutes, yeah. So it's to set up an HTTP server to handle requests on 3 routes: the home routes, about routes, contacts routes. So responses should be simple HTML documents read from your file system with a p tag that has a simple message. Also, make provisions for non-existent routes. So you set up an HTTP server to handle requests on 3 routes: the home, about, contacts. Responses should be simple HTML documents read from your file system with a p tag and a simple message, just a simple HTML document. Also, you should make provisions for non-existent routes. So if they go to anything aside these 3 routes, you should show them an error page that this route does not exist. So to do this, you would use the HTTP module, you use the FS module, the process of reading file from system. So you can check online, see how you can try to solve that. And in 20 minutes, I'll see how far you could get. I would also be doing it on my end as well. Do you guys understand?
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll meet again in 20 minutes. Hi guys. Are we making progress? Did you get the question? Can I stop sharing?
Yes, sir.
Let's stop. So this is the question in case you did not see it.
Yes.
Hello, guys. Hello?
Hi, sir.
Yeah, has anybody been able to successfully complete it?
You know,
Yeah, I've seen it too.
Or can you share your screen and let me see what you have so far?
Okay, sir. Can you see my screen, sir?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Yeah, I want to go the
Okay. Okay. Host name pause. Okay. Scroll down. Route 1, Route 2, Route 3. Scroll down. Yes. Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. So the only thing I would say you should change is reading. You've not yet implemented reading from your file system. So rather than returning this p tag that you had put it here, okay, I can already see the HTML documents here. All right. So you're yet to implement with the HTML documents here.
Yes, sir.
All right, fantastic. Good job, good job. Thank you. Anybody else wants to show me their attempts? Anyone else? Anybody? All right, so I guess I can move on to the very last thing I have on my agenda relating to NodeJs. Let me share my screen again. Okay, and let me know when you can see my screen.
Okay, sir. Yeah, we can see your screen, sir.
I can move on to the very last thing relating to NodeJs, and that I want to take, not relating to NodeJs, that I want to take for the purpose of this course today. So you can think of, so what I want to take is Express. Give me a second, please. So the next thing I want to talk about is Express. So if I bring up from the package manager, so the process of doing what we did, that's create the server, listen for ports and all that, it becomes very, very tedious when you are trying to build out large scale applications. So what Express does is that it's a minimal framework that is built on top of Node.js, and it provides a huge set of features for building backend applications. So it essentially simplifies the process of creating HTTP servers and handling requests and sending out responses that you typically encounter when you are building out applications. So with Express, as a developer, you can quickly build out scalable applications, efficient applications with Node.js and JavaScript on the server side. Do you understand? So all these verbosity.
Sir, a bit recap, sir.
Okay, so all you can look at it in terms of verbosity. When you start creating doing multiple routes, do you want to be writing if else for multiple routes, or when you need to use middleware? So middlewares are interceptors or are processes that intercept requests before getting to the final route handler that will handle that request. So if you need to implement middlewares in your application, if you need to transform your requests to some certain things. If you need to do authentication and authorization, check if a user has appropriate permission to receive routes. Once your application starts becoming large, you need a simpler way to create and handle all those requests and responses that you're going to be working with in your application. So Express is a minimal, is a framework that provides minimalism and a huge set of features for working with all those processes. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So the same way we installed Express Lodash, we will install Express. So it's a fast, unopinionated. So I want you to take note of this word here. It's going to come very handy when we are talking about Nest.js, when we are looking at Nest.js. So it is a fast, unopinionated, minimalistic web framework for Node.js. So the first thing we will do is to install Express in our application. So in this same project that we are working in, I can bring up npm install Express. I'll save that so we can scan our package.json to see if it successfully installs. I mean, it will show you the message here. Or we can still scan our package.json to see that change in real time. So you can see here, you already have the Express package. In your node modules, you now have additional things that's come in your this thing for just for Express. So just for Express. So imagine, let's see how large this file is now. Reveal in File Explorer. So this is the node modules folder now with just 2 packages. Let's see how large it is. Currently, it's just 3 MB. So in the context of large scale applications, let me bring up one of my applications.
Wow.
So this is a node module for a typical application. So imagine trying to upload and download going on 218 megabytes now from Git. It will be very, very cumbersome.
Seriously.
So you can see how the node modules, the package.json file comes in.
And grow big.
All right. So after installing the package, the next thing we want to do, let's work from server.js. Okay, so let me change something in my own application. The entry points. Introduction. Okay. So the entry point is introduction here. So let me comment this one out. So from here now, we can already use this Express is equal to require Express. Let me just copy this directly and paste it here. So you can see what the documentation does. I don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Express.
And then I'll copy this one here too as well. So what I first did is to import the package I want to use, Express package. And then this one here, it creates an Express application. The top level, you don't need to bother yourself with the verbosity of it. So this is everything. This is the source code behind that. You don't need to bother yourself with that. All you need to know is that with this command, with this function, we are initializing a new Express application. And on that Express application, we are defining a route that accepts GET requests on the default paths. And then we are listening for requests on port 3000. Do you understand? So this is the most basic this thing we can do. You import the package you're trying to work with. You initialize an Express application. You define a route, and then you listen for requests. So you can already see how many lines of code you've already broken down just by using Express. The if else that you're doing is already negated by just this route. So if I want to add another route now, let's say I call this one home. I call this one about. I call this one home. Page. I call this one about page. So if I save this and I run, do npm run stats. So what this does, this npm run stats command is a new command because we have already initialized our package.json file inside this folder. When we are inside this folder, we have some scripts that are provided to us by default. So npm run stats is akin to saying node server.js.
Okay.
Excuse me. If you remember when we were creating our, I don't know if that will still be here. History, package.json, package.json. Oh, it's gone. So when we're creating our, initializing our NPM project, it asked us for, what's the name? It asked us for a base, for an entry point. That's the introduction.js. And then it asked us for a start point. That's the server.js.
Yes,
so it puts all those together, node as node server.js in this script, npm run stats. So when you run npm run stats, you're essentially writing node server.js. So if you want to initialize another file there, you can do that. So currently, is even this file that is running is not our introduction.js that is running. So I guess we would have to change this one here. The main file is introduction. So that should be our stats file.
Standard.js.
Introduction.js. See if I stop that and I don't get any nonsense. So you can already see that introduction.js is running. So if I go to localhost 3000, who can tell me what the response of going to this route will be? Localhost 3000.
It's a,
Eh? Anybody?
to listen to this, it is the new pod that we created.
Yes.
Okay. So we pass in it will go to the default.
It will go to
That's default page.
it will go to what page?
The first one, the home.
The home.
Yes.
Okay, let's test that out. So what it says now is cannot
get
/ because with the new method we've done, it is explicit mapping. You know, I said computer is garbage in, garbage out. Whatever you tell it to do, that is what it will do. So you by default, you know that if you see a route that is / you know that automatically will default to the home page.
Home page, exactly.
Or with computer, it does not know / by default.
You have to define it.
You have to define it. So in our application here, we did not define anything.
So we put, yes.
So currently, any routes that we did not define, it will not go. So if I do / home,
it will
you
take
can
us
get
to
the
home
home
page.
page.
Okay.
About, you get the about page. So with this one now, we can now build out complex applications. This is the starting point for building out complex applications. The same way you access the file system in this thing, in the default HTTP, using the default HTTP module, you can do that one here. So this Express bundles the HTTP module as well. It runs your create server, that create server, this thing, it runs that one, and then it does some other things for you to be able to
Manipulate.
For you to be able to get everything running. So the reason why I introduced this express is because NestJS that we are going to be talking about is built on top of this express. You understand? So a basic introduction to express was necessary.
But so I say you want to create you want to impute the default page, just like the one we saw in the first trial. How are you going to create one?
He's saying what?
Let's say we are going to create a default page. If you didn't pass in home, or you didn't pass in about it, or you didn't pass in, okay, it will take you to
You
the
are going to
default
have
page.
to specify it here.
Okay.
Once you save it, you stop and then you start again. npm run starts. So you have to explicitly tell it that.
This
So
is a
now
default.
home does not go again. If I put /, it gets the home page.
I got it.
So the same way we can send a response here, we can do something different now.
Passing the page.
Eh?
How can we pass in the page?
And that's what I want to do. Index.html. We can do something different. Let me look for a simple HTML page. Welcome. So if I save this index.html now, so to return a file now, rather than going into your file system and then doing fs.read and all those beautiful things, you can just define fs.send file, and then you specify the path to the file. So in this case, it is /index.html. And then the last thing you would put now is, how would I explain this thing? You know, when we were importing where was that introduction? Did I give it that? Names.js. Okay, I think it was introduction. When we're importing local files that we used.
Right to file, yes.
So we use the // nomenclature without giving it any other information. So that's like the relative parts from the folder you are in.
Exactly.
So, but for you to be
Let's
able
say we
to
have
now,
multiple.
since this is not a process that is going to be running from your inside your application, it is based off of a request that is coming from your browser. So res.send file, that your request does not know what all these ones is. So you need to explicitly tell it the absolute parts of that file. And the way you do that is to specify a root position. And here, this is where another of the things we talked about comes in handy. We now define the directory name. So we use the __ directory name nomenclature to define. So this whole thing now resolves to the absolute parts that can now be returned back as a response. So let me remove this first and save this and rerun this. npm run starts. So if I go to and I press enter, so you see the error here now. The path must be absolute.
Specify return. Wow.
Or you specify so you have to specify the absolute path to where that file is in. It does not know internal system nomenclature that does / this. So if I return this back, save, stop, and rerun. And if I refresh, you can see it.
Okay.
So this particular process you already have now, it negates the need to use file system, fs.read file, if error this, if error that, all that is no more there again.
But sir,
Yes.
can we pass in? Can we pass the URL into a variable and call the variable there?
Can you pass what?
The URL, all this index.html, pass it inside a variable and I'll call the variable name.
Yes, you can do that. Path, let's path. Let me say yes, you can. So let's just test it out together.
So I have a cleaner code.
Yeah, I like the way you're thinking. I like the way you're thinking.
This is much more cleaner.
So let's do that. No errors. So it works.
It works.
Welcome page.
Yes, this is much more cleaner.
So you can already see what Express gives you as a backend application. When we even go into NodeJs now, you will see more and more of what you can do in terms of
but sir,
yes,
we say this is this file that we just created, index.html, is inside the directory that we're working.
Yes.
That is why we call this this root underscore dr name.
Yes.
Because they are in the same. How about if they are not in the same directory?
If they are, okay, so you now have to define navigational patterns on how to get access to
that file,
that particular file. So it will start from this root directory name. This is essentially the starting point.
Okay, so this is a default. This root colon underscore dr name cannot be changed.
No.
This root.
You can change it now. You can change it as long, you know, this directory name equates to something as well. Let's refresh. Put this here. So this is the directory name. So in place of that directory name now, you can put a string there. You can put a string that would essentially relate to the path you're trying to access. You can set a string that will relate to the path and then just specify the file name here. Or on the flip side, you can write the absolute path to the file you are trying to access in this path specification here. There are multiple ways you can go about it. But by default, once you are working in a code, you will typically have everything inside the same directory.
Yes. I like it. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? It seems Zoli Muhammad is the most interested in what I have to say.
Oh, we are following too.
Any questions? But so far, so
trying
good.
to sync the magic.
Is it making sense?
Yes, sir. It is.
Okay, I've not heard your voice at all.
No questions, sir.
No questions. So you understand everything.
That's good, like 50%. Well, I'll go back and wait.
Okay. So I would also share the I'll share the PowerPoint document I use for this class, and then the recording as well. So you can use those two together, a bit more research. I would also share the NodeJs PowerPoints as well that we are going to use in our next class. So you can kind of, I don't want to start that one again today, so it does not feel like a bombardment of information. So I think we can stop here for today. let you guys assimilate in what it is we've talked about. Ruminate on it. I'll give you the NestJS PowerPoint as well. You can look at that one in advance so that we can at least get a little bit of footing, or what I'm explaining will not be very, very foreign to you by then. So, yeah. Any questions? Is it safe to call it a day?
I think we have the video. We have the video to fall back at.
Yes.
All
You've
right,
sent-
all right. You also have YouTube as well.
Yes.
There are thousands and Node.js. Like I said, it has a very huge community. There are plenty tutorials you can use as well. If there is something that is still not clear to you, even after my explanation. So there is a lot to fall back on if you don't understand. And as well, I'm available in the WhatsApp community that has been created for DevLink. You can shoot me any question and I'll be more than happy to answer.
All right, sir.
Sir,
Thank you very much.
Sir,
Yes.
I have this question, please.
All right, fire away.
Actually, I have a little experience with Java and PHP.
Okay.
So I want to relate the knowledge to this of Node.js. If you want to deploy PHP application, you normally have on your computer, you should have Apache, WAM server, or if you're using Linux, you need to have or you can use XAMPP for bots. When you have XAMPP, you now go to htdocs inside the directory and create all your PHP there, and you link it up with your database, and you're good to go.
Okay.
But this Node.js, actually, we have to develop APIs. I just need a simple ABC. You set this, you do this, and you do this, and you're good to go for Node.js application.
Okay. What's the question?
The question is, how can we set up? How can you set up an environment for Node.js on your computer?
This is it. This is essentially it. So we'll not be connecting to databases in Node.js because that's rudimentary. I don't want to say it's old school. So we'll be doing that with NestJS, but this is essentially it. There are configurations to set up your databases here. So what this Express does is that it starts a server for you. You don't need Apache or all those things. It starts a server. Once you migrate this code base.
Yes.
Once you migrate this code base to whatever server it is you want to deploy your application on, once you click npm run start, your server is already running. All your configurations are automatically booted up based on how you have set them up in your dev environment. Once you run npm run start, everything is automatically the same way you have it on your dev server. So you don't need to set up any Apache Tomcat, all those ones. They already come pre-built for you with their packages and their in your modules.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
All right, now we'll call it a day. I will send out the PowerPoints and then the videos before the end of the day, and then you guys can look it over.
Okay,
Have a
sir.
wonderful
Thank you,
rest
sir.
of the day, guys.
All right, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You too, sir.
Yeah.